I want to talk to you about something that has come up over and over again lately. And it's been sort of, the question's been sparked by the concourses, the mountain dogs that have been here. But I want to talk to you about something that it would be great for everyone to know, because I didn't know this. I had been in rescue and dog behavior for years and years before I understood this concept, which is called littermate syndrome. So the reason I wanted to bring it up is because so many people that have been following the stories of the mountain dogs have been saying that they really hope they stay together. When our article came out on, or not our article, but our video came out on the dodo, lots and lots of people said, oh, all they've been through, they need to stay together. That would be the worst thing to separate them at this point. So I want to explain how that all works to you so you can kind of understand going forward. And a lot of you guys are already aware of it, but I want to make it abundantly clear why that would not be a good idea. So it certainly has nothing to do with being cruel to these dogs, because yes, they have been through a lot and they do deserve the absolute best. But the best thing for them would be to go into individual homes where they are loved and cherished by their own family, and they would not be in competition with their siblings. Okay, so let me explain what that means. I didn't know this for years. I had been a trainer and a rescuer for, oh my gosh, 15 years before I even heard that name, that littermate syndrome. I'd never heard of it before. There are tons of articles about it on the internet, and I'm going to put like 3 of my top ones on this post when I'm done with this video, so that you guys can read all about it. But here's what happens when you adopt 2 dogs or buy 2 dogs from a breeder that are related, that are littermates. What happens is that is not the natural state of the dog any more than it is for us. And you guys can all identify with this. As much as you may love your siblings, you would not want to grow up with them forever and ever, and grow up with them as children and then live with them forever and ever. Most of us, we kind of want to go our own way, create our own separate packs, families, whatever, right? That's the norm. Doesn't mean we don't love our siblings. It just means that the normal path for most individuals is to grow up and move on and create your own pack. Well, it's the same for dogs. So in nature, that's what they do. They split up, they create their own pack, and they move on and create a family. So when we get them together, which seems like such a great idea when they're just puppies, and we've gone to a breeder and they have, let's say, 8 or 9 adorable little puppies, and they're just this big and they look so cute together, it just makes so much sense. Why not get 2? If we're going to get 1, we may as well get 2. Or we go to rescue and they've got a litter of puppies and the same thing happens. Is why not get 2? We can train them at the same time. It'll be less work. The kids will love it. There's 2 kids, each one has their own puppy. Whatever the rationale is, this is why it's not going to work. Because what happens when you get littermates is that those littermates develop a very neurotic, abnormal bond to each other. Those of you that have already done this know exactly what I'm talking about. They will barely pay attention to you. They have high pack drive with each other, but 0 pack drive with you. They don't need to, because they are already linked up emotionally and mentally with their sibling. So that's how they began their lives, and so that's kind of how it continues. They have a really tough time focusing. It's next to impossible to train them, especially if you're trying to train them together. It's really difficult. On top of that, what happens over and over again, and I will tell you from over 20 years of experience as a dog behaviorist, I've seen this again and again and again. And this is one of the few things that I can say that I sometimes cannot completely resolve is littermate syndrome issues, because they become hardwired with these issues. So what happens is they're very difficult to train initially, because their bond is towards each other, not to you, right? Their focus is on each other, not to you, so they can hardly pay attention to what you're trying to do. Then what happens, which is even worse, is they reach sexual maturity. And when this happens, now all of a sudden they start bickering, and then the bickering becomes fighting, and in some cases it can be a fight to the death. I mean, they really, really go into it hard. Now, I know that there are going to be people that are watching this right now that will tell me that they had an exception to this case, and I know there are exceptions. I've seen it. I've worked with people that have exceptional situations where they've adopted siblings and it's worked out. In particular, it works out better if the siblings are male and female. They have a better chance of making it work. When it's same sex, 2 females, 2 males, it's harder to work out. Here's another thing that I know. I can't tell you how many times my vet has called me to tell me that they have are having issues because one dog out of the two siblings that have been adopted by someone or bought by someone is at the clinic, the other dog is not there, they can't even work on the dog because the dog is losing their marbles. They're completely out of their mind with stress and anxiety because their sibling isn't there. I had a case of these people have become very dear friends. They bought two German Shepherds that the breeder encouraged them to buy and said, well, they're very bonded. Well, of course they're bonded. They're 6, 7, 8 weeks old. Of course they're bonded. But that doesn't mean they're not going to bond to another dog or another human. So that's a big red flag. If you ever find a breeder that tells you that these two dogs must go together. And I've heard it so many times I would never bring it up if it was only mentioned to me once or twice. But I could write a book that thick on the number of people that tell me that the breeder encouraged them, if not insisted, that they get siblings. Okay, big mistake. So then what happens is they start to fight. I'll give you a story. I'll tell you a story that happened to me a couple of years ago. Really good friend, a gal that I trained that has she's a phenomenal trainer herself. She lives in Bermuda. They have an amazing community there. They get all of their dogs from England, basically from breeders in England. And so when they go to get these dogs, of course, when they're there, it's like, well, we may as well get two dogs, right? We're going all the way to England to get these dogs to bring them back here. I stayed there for about 4 days, and for 4 straight days, I did nothing but one consult after another, after another, after another, with people that were having major issues with litter mates. So bad that they literally had to consider rehoming one of the two dogs. So not a good idea. So let's take it back to, this is going to be a super long video, and I didn't intend on that happening. But this information really needs to get out because so many people are unfamiliar with it. So I have 3 Cane Corsos here now, right? The mountain dogs that are absolutely lovely, wonderful, beautiful dogs. They've come so far. I'm so, so proud of them. For a while, I wasn't allowing them to socialize basically physically in the yard. They're always near each other in their run. But remember, when they came in, they couldn't be handled. They couldn't be leashed. They wouldn't go in a crate. If I spoke, said anything, a leaf dropped, the gravel moved under my feet, anything would set them off, they would absolutely flip out. So they have come a long, long way from there. Then the girls decided they should both go into heat at the same time with an unneutered male, right? So that wasn't good. So for about 6, 7 weeks, I couldn't let them be together at all. Well, now I can let them be together. They've all been spayed. The 2 girls have been spayed. Steve has been neutered. So his testosterone has gone down to the point that I can actually put them together without him trying to mount them every 3 seconds. So they're actually doing really well together now. Here's the deal. When I put them out together, they play. They have a very kind of cute way of Corso playing, which they do this pat thing, this pound down with their paw. They have amazing skills, social skills with dogs. They're so much more comfortable with dogs than with humans. But they'll play like that. But if I bring my dogs out, they immediately become suspect. They're immediately looking at each other. What do we do? That's not part of our pack. They're suspect. I don't trust them in that environment, although they have never exhibited even a drop of aggression or reactivity towards anybody in my pack. But I notice that their entire demeanor changes under those circumstances. So what's happening here is these dogs are never going to excel and become the dogs that they really want to be unless they're separated and in a home where they can bond with other dogs that aren't litter mates, but they can bond with other dogs the same way they do with mine. I'm pointing down here because my dogs are all laying down here right now. But the same way they do with mine, and they can have these healthy, amazing relationships where they flourish and their personality comes out and they learn to trust. They're totally different animals when they're with my dogs as opposed to when they're with each other. Now here's the other thing that's really interesting, something I really want you to know. When I put Grace, she's the smallest of the 3 Corsos. She's one of the females. Grace has always been the most submissive to the point of almost being shut down. When she was on the mountain, they were keeping her, the other 2 were keeping her from the food because Princess George is the most dominant. Steve is probably the second most confident, which isn't saying much because he's pretty fearful, but he's at least more confident than Grace. But they were keeping Grace away from the food. Even when I first got them here and I couldn't crate them up to feed them, which is my preference, I would feed them in their runs. And what would happen is, even when I put their bowls down in their individual runs, Grace wouldn't eat. She would look over at them, and while they were eating, they would look over at her. They couldn't get to her, but she would not eat until I took them out and put them in another area, and then she would eat. When I put them out to socialize a few days ago after all the spay and neuter and everything, the heat was all over, they had nothing to do with each other. So just so you guys know, it's not that I haven't allowed it, it's that they want nothing to do with Grace. Grace needs to be the first one to be adopted out of this group. She's not sad, she's not hurt, she's not upset. She just cannot bond with them because they are the two more dominant dogs in the pack, and they have a bond with each other, and they're excluding her. There's always going to be one that's the most dominant, the alpha, whatever you want to call it, and there's always going to be a subordinate pack member, or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, whatever. Anytime you go to look at a pack of a litter of puppies, whether you're going to a breeder or shelter or a private rescue or whatever, you're always going to be able to pick out who's the, this is a term that is probably overly used, but back of the pack dog, and the dog that is the more forward of the dogs, okay? Grace is not. When she's out with my dogs alone, she does great. She has a very sweet, soft style of playing. She's awesome. So it's important that you guys know that. I don't want you to think that I'm deliberately keeping them apart. There'd be no reason for that. I would love to, and I do socialize them together. But I know that the only way these dogs are going to grow and thrive is when they're with my pack, or get into a home where they're with another pack, or another 1 or 2 dogs, or however it turns out. But littermate syndrome is real. In some cases, it's impossible, literally, and I don't use that word lightly, but it's literally impossible to resolve. One of the dogs needs to be rehomed, which is heartbreaking for people that were told, oh, these 2 dogs are bonded, they have to be together. But here's how it plays out. I'll just reiterate. In the beginning, they're neurotically bonded with each other. They won't pay attention to you. They won't focus on you. You can't train them together. You can't take one to the vet and leave the other behind. You can't take one on a walk and leave the other behind. It's crazy how neurotic that bond is. And that was what was going on with the 2 German Shepherds that I didn't go into detail about it earlier, but 2 German Shepherds where my wonderful clients adopted them and was told that they had to be adopted or bought together. They're amazing people. They brought one of the dogs to me for rehabilitation. She was here for probably 3 months. It's a big case. They're doing well. They're so committed to them. They're going to make it work no matter what. And they abide by all the rules. They train them separately. They take them places separately. They do everything they could possibly do to make this work. And they have. It's not ideal, but they have made it work. So just wanted to let you guys know that I have, there are a couple of articles that I would really like you guys to read online. One of them is the Whole Dog Journal. I'll put the link below so you can read it. Or you can go to Whole Dog Journal and then Google littermate syndrome. So that will get you to the same article. It's a really, really, really comprehensive article. The other one is Patricia McConnell, who's one of my heroes. She's always writes amazing things about dog behavior. She's phenomenal. She wrote the book at the other end of the leash. Sorry, Patricia, I know you're not watching me, but if you were, I don't want to botch up the name of your book, but she's a very well-known, very famous